Welcome to the debate. Usually a corporate org chart is just, a practical diagram, just lines and boxes.
Right, and if the structure isn't hitting those quarterly targets, you just erase the lines.
Exactly. You redraw them based on the data. But what happens when you try to draw those reporting lines in permanent divine ink?
Well, you basically stop running a business and start running a theology.
Right. So today we're looking at a modern religious manifesto, the 7 divine decisions for financial prosperity. And we're asking, if you strip away the theology and read this as a secular business school student, can these religious frameworks actually serve as elite management strategies?
Yeah, and it's a fascinating tension.
It is, and I'm arguing yes, they can. Principles like embracing divine authority, they actually encode highly effective, purpose-driven leadership structures.
And my perspective is that if you bring absolute spiritual authority into a secular boardroom, you aren't really building organizational cohesion. You're basically building a corporate cult. You completely destroy empirical accountability.
But look at the sheer psychological power here. Decision 2 is embrace your assignment, and decision 5 is honor the scriptural chain of authority.
Which is a heavy phrase to bring to the office.
It is, absolutely. But if you've ever worked for a really charismatic founder, you know the magic happens when an employee feels their role is like a higher calling, right? Not just a paycheck.
Sure, I agree with that.
Yeah, and treating leadership as structurally unquestionable, it eliminates that constant, paralyzing second-guessing. You get an engineering team willing to execute a massive product pivot simply because they trust the founder's vision absolutely.
Trust is one thing, though. Demanded submission is a completely different animal. Look at the actual text for Decision 5.
Okay.
It explicitly cites Hebrews 13:17, which says, "Obey them that have the rule over you and submit yourselves." Now, in a religious context, there's a theological safety net.
Right, because God is ultimately in charge.
Exactly. God is perfectly just and holding that leader accountable. But when you transplant that exact mandate into a secular corporation, you rip away the safety net. You're demanding absolute submission to a highly fallible CEO.
Well, you're calling it demanded submission, but I actually see it as the engine for making impossible choices during crises.
How so?
Take Decision 7, honor the whispers of the Holy Spirit. The text cites Isaiah talking about hearing a voice behind you telling you which way to walk.
Right.
Functionally, isn't that just ancient vernacular for founder's instinct? It's that rapid, subconscious pattern recognition we actively teach executives to rely on when the data just isn't clear.
I have to push back there because there is a massive difference between a secular founder's instinct and divine revelation.
They function the same way in a boardroom, don't they?
No, because founder's instinct is fundamentally falsifiable. If a CEO says, "Hey, my gut tells me to launch this product," and the market rejects it,
The board fires them.
exactly. They point to plummeting revenue and they fire them. But Decision 7 invokes being guided into all truth. Divine truth is unfalsifiable.
Well, yes, but
Wait, if a CEO claims a spiritual or absolute mandate for a strategy, how does a board critique that with market data? You literally can't A/B test a revelation.
fair point. But the framework actually accounts for market failure. If you look at Decision 6, it tells leaders to identify hidden opportunities in every adversarial crisis.
Right, the resilience framing.
Yes! Framing distress as the place where strength is perfected. It's a brilliant psychological resilience loop. It teaches an entire corporate culture to metabolize failure into innovation rather than just panicking.
But it's a closed loop, and that is exactly the problem.
Why is a closed loop bad for resilience?
Because when you combine the resilience of Decision 6 with the absolute authority of Decision 5, you totally insulate bad management.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Right. Imagine the CEO makes a disastrous call based on their unfalsifiable intuition. The company tanks. Decision 6 kicks in and says, "Rejoice, this is a hidden opportunity."
Yeah, reframing the loss.
But meanwhile, Decision 5 ensures no subordinate can raise their hand and say, "Actually, you just misread the market." The failure is reframed as a test, and the leader is completely shielded from the consequences of their own bad bet.
Okay, I do see the risk of insulation, absolutely. But extracting the psychological wisdom from these texts, the profound sense of purpose, the resilience, the trust and high-level intuition, it gives a secular business a driving, unified soul.
A soul that ignores data.
And not necessarily. It just provides the kind of deep alignment that traditional, sterile corporate manuals just can't generate.
I just can't get past the cost. I mean, the moment a business strategy becomes an unquestionable doctrine, the organization loses its ability to adapt to reality.
Right.
You might get deep alignment, sure, but you're aligning behind a structure that actively punishes critical thinking.
It's a tension, right? A tension every leader has to navigate. When we search for inspiration outside the standard textbooks, we really have to recognize what we're importing.
Absolutely. You have to ask where inspiration ends and dogma begins.
Exactly. So we leave it to you to look closely at the culture of your own workplace. Are you driven by a shared, adaptable mission, or are you just following a very charismatic dogma?